through the papers now, and joining us this morning is former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, writer and journalist Emma Wolfe. Good morning to the both of you. David, should we start with you then? And Sir Gavin Williamson quit late last night over new claims of bullying. What do you make of this?
Well, it's a self-inflicted wound, quite a serious one. I'm looking mainly at the Times, where it's the front page, Williamson quits amid new claims of bullying, and then there's a lot of stuff on an inside page, page 6, which includes what Rishi Sunak will not want to read, Sunak's judgment in question analysis. I mean, Gavin Williamson is a twerp.
There he goes. Yeah.
But that's the bottom line, isn't it? He's a twerp. The moment I heard him do an interview, I thought, this man is a twerp. And I don't understand why anyone would think, you know, he having been sacked by 2 prime ministers, who would want to be the third? Why was he brought back?
Practical terms, because he couldn't afford not to have him in, presumably, along with Suella Braverman. Both of them brought valuable numbers to his leadership bid at a time when the party desperately needed stability and a unity candidate.
But if the party needs stability, it doesn't appoint. Look, Suella Braverman, who I either like, actually, I have to tell you, I think she's a toughie, and we need a few toughies in politics, but she needed to rest on her laurels for a bit, because you cannot, as Home Secretary, leak things or through your private phone. I mean, this is just not how it's done. With Williamson, I mean, there are quite a lot of other papers where they attack him. See, you cannot have a man with that many enemies rolling around, and it seems everyone is against him. And therefore, because, I mean, this business about, inviting this chap to slit his throat. I mean, I managed to get through 11 years as a minister, and I never invited any of my civil servants to slit their throats.
Well,
generally, I would not recommend it as a way.
I have heard some commentators saying that that's, fairly common language for whips to use. No? Okay,
it categorically is not common language. And, most sensible ministers get on well with their civil servants. The civil servants aren't there to destroy you. They're not there to damage you. The art of working with the civil servants is to realise how bright a lot of them are and get the best out of them. And if you feel a civil servant is not really committed to what you're trying to do, he is gently moved on. But I think the trouble with Williamson is he was a disaster waiting to happen. It was rather like, an unexploded bomb that they wanted, that Sunak chose to put in his lap. And this is the serious thing for Sunak, and that's what the Times analysis says, Sunak's judgment in question. Rishi Sunak is plainly a cut above his predecessor. He's plainly a very bright man, plainly a civilized man, but he makes mistakes, far too many of them. I mean, ludicrous photo where, he's prevailed upon to go to this COP conference. He could just as easily have not gone. And there he is, the far left, you have to sort of have a blow up to see him there. Usually the place reserved for the president of Upper Volta. And there he is there, and you think, who is advising this man? You see, again, I'll just make the point, Margaret Thatcher was a toughie, as I know only too well. And she certainly was willing to be very tough with me, tougher even than my mum was. But I tell you that the point is, Margaret Thatcher needed a tough chap who knew what was going on to make sure she didn't make the wrong judgments. He was called William Whitelaw, Military Cross in the Second World War, tough fellow, and he would tell her what she needed to know. Who is telling Sunak what he needs to know? This is the problem.
And Emma Wolfe, I suppose, just reading the papers this morning, you get a sense maybe the honeymoon is coming to an end already, and you can only assume that's going to get worse for Sunak as we head into the autumn statement next week. And you've chosen a story on the front of the Express. I mean, looking at the triple lock specifically, I mean, he's planning to honour that, but at what expense, and how is he going to do that?
Well, as you say, this is ahead of the autumn statement that we're all agog for on November the 17th. The Daily Express are claiming a victory for their readers. Their 300,000 voices have been heard, they say. This is Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt. It looks like they will honour that pledge that was made in the 2019 manifesto. I think this is a really, really important part of the statement, of the, basically it's a budget, isn't it? In terms of, increasing pensions and benefits, a lot of people, working people now on universal credit, and increasing those in line with inflation. It's really, really important, and it's part of Rishi Sunak's, I think, determination to get the ship back on track, to get the train back on the tracks ahead of a general election in the next couple of years. Pensioners are the ones who vote, and they often are the ones who vote Tory.
But, David, 30% of those live in properties worth over £1 million. And, what expense is this very expensive policy going to come at? I mean, how are they? I was reading this morning, they're talking about a 50p rate of income tax for the top rate earners. They're talking about stealth taxes in terms of council tax. These are things that are also going to really upset Conservative voters.
Of course they are. And, look, I have a confession to make.
Go on.
I'm a pensioner.
And I presume you're one of the 30%.
No, you should reel back in more and say, no, surely not. You only look about
Oh, sorry,
35.
that was the response.
Okay, we'll take that one again, okay? But the reality is, the idea that pensioners are all short of money is nonsense. And this triple lock, the thing about getting rid of inflation is you get rid of inflation by bearing down on it. What you do not do is build in inflation by giving increases either in wages or in benefits that actually reinforce inflation. And I think this is such a mistake. And, but obviously, when we think of a pensioner, we think of some sad old soul living on the 25th floor of a council tower block without a penny to bless herself with. Well, there are people like that, and they can be helped in other parts of the social security system. But what a lot of people are pensioners who can perfectly well afford their little trips to Tesco's. I'm a big Tesco visitor, and I buy my food, and to be honest, it doesn't matter to me what the pension is. I don't say that to boast. I say that because there are lots of people like me, but they never form a part of this argument.
But there are a lot of working families and working people who are on universal credit. There are a lot of pensioners who do need that money. And
but then they're on universal credit. You're making the point for me.
I agree with you that there should be a mechanism whereby pensioners, wealthy or well-off pensioners, comfortable pensioners, don't get the winter fuel allowance, don't get their free TV licences, don't get the uplift in the pension. But I'm afraid that actually a lot of people do need this uplift.
Yeah, but sorry, forgive me, maybe I'm not at my most clear at this hour of the morning. I'm making the point, as you'd expect me to do as a former Chief Secretary of the Treasury, that money goes to those in need, and it goes to those in need by an assessment which allows things like universal credit to be paid. What you don't do is find a random 100 pensioners and give them all the same increase, because some will need it and some won't. And it's difficult, I think, with some of these new ministers to actually persuade them that public money is not a cheap good. It's not something like Boris used to go, chuck some more money at it. And what you need to be able to do, if we're going to purge inflation, is stop building inflation in by these automatic increases way above what they ought to be.
We also need a Bank of England who does their job. Their job is their single job is to keep inflation at around 2%.
And they've failed to do it.
What have they been doing? They're literally asleep on the job.
But has any country got
I agree.
at 2%?
We can certainly agree on that.
And the problem with inflation at the moment is it's. I mean, David will know a lot more about this, but it's a more complicated situation. Inflation at the moment, isn't it? It's also the war in Ukraine.
I think the governor of the Bank of England should be a surprise addition to the jungle, and bits of him could be eaten.
Right, David, should we have a look across the pond then to the midterms going on in the US right now? The polls have closed. It's not the red wave that was expected,
Exactly.
It looks at this point.
I mean, this is where papers obviously are at a disadvantage if you only read the hard copies, because they're going to be hours behind. But of course, a lot of us read our papers online, and then you get the up-to-date situation. And it appears that what has happened is that the Republicans have not made the gains that were to be anticipated. The Republicans will take over the House, but they are not present. It presently looks going to take over the Senate, although it comes down to the wretched state of Georgia, and there'll be all manner of messing about as they spend several days trying to work out who won, just as they did last time. But I think a lot of this comes down to Donald Trump. I mean, one of the reasons why I thought some of the things in the papers are so good is Donald Trump basically threatening Ron DeSantis, saying that if he runs, all kinds of things will come out about him. And, you know, I've got to say that this is more like, you know, you keep thinking, am I watching American politics or am I watching The Godfather? You know, awful.
Yeah. We talk about blue on blue over here, the red on red already before he's declared that he's running, and
the Republicans are red in America. How dare they? You know, it's confusing.
It is rather confusing. Any thoughts on what's happening in the States?
Very exciting. I can't wait for Donald Trump to make his mind up about 2024.
You want him to run on
Absolutely.
Tuesday? Yeah, just for the entertainment factor, or
why shouldn't he? If people want to elect him, I think it's absolutely... I'm just sick of the bleeding heart Liberals. I think it would be great fun if Trump decides to run.
Interesting.
Mystic Mellor feels the prediction coming. Okay.
Go on.
So the prediction is this. If Trump runs, the Republicans will not win because there are enough people, a silent majority in America, who are capable of being disgusted by Trump, and they will not vote for him. Don't forget, the Democrats have far more members than the Republicans, so Republicans only win when they have a good candidate, and usually when the Democrats have got a poor candidate. Trump is not a good candidate.
I do think it was really interesting. We were just talking to Dr. Luntz out in the States, a huge name over there, and he was saying that actually the effect of Donald Trump saying that he'd won 2 elections effectively, but you know, even though the courts and serious audits have proved that actually, no, he lost that election fair and square. The fact that he's pushed that narrative so strongly has actually had a detrimental effect on Republican turnout because people have stopped trusting the system, and he thinks that's going to be a huge story over the next couple of days. I mean, that would be an interesting plot twist in all of this.
Exactly.
And also, don't forget, Trump didn't win that election. He was, I think, 2 or 3 million behind in the popular vote. It's just in America where it's, you know, you vote in your state and then the states come together to form the electoral college for the president. Trump never won the presidency in terms of a plurality of the votes. And the worry is that Trump will so undermine some people's confidence in America. Look, Trump led an insurrection. Trump inspired, and some of us think led, an invasion of Congress.
Well, some say he just made a speech, didn't lead an insurrection. Certainly he wouldn't... I mean,
no, he wouldn't agree. I appreciate if he was here, he'd probably threaten me with all kinds of terrible things coming out about me. But I think at a certain point, people in America have got to stand up for the rights of American citizens to vote and to have confidence in American democracy. And they don't at the moment, or at least a lot of them don't.
I don't know where the time's going. We've got to leave it there. David Mellor, Emma Wolf, I'm so sorry that's rattled past so quickly. We will have more from both of them around the same time, just after 7:30. So stay with us for that. Thank you both.